There are nights a man remembers for the rest of his life, and then there are nights that carve themselves into the bone, nights that never stop echoing, no matter how long he tries to outrun them. For Jason Keller, it began on the kind of cold October evening when the world feels heavy, as if something unseen is settling over the dark. He didn't know it then, but by midnight everything he believed about love, loyalty, and truth would tear itself apart. And by dawn, he would understand the cruelest truth of all. Sometimes the person you trust most is the person who destroys you. Jason had always been a creature of routine, a man who believed that a quiet life meant a safe one. He came home from work the same way he always did. Lights off inside the house, Lauren's car gone, her favorite mug still sitting beside the sink from that morning. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, just an ordinary Thursday evening in a quiet Michigan suburb where nothing ever seemed to happen. But something was wrong the moment he stepped inside. The air felt still, too still. The kind of stillness that doesn't belong in a home that's lived in. Jason noticed the silence first, a deep and hollow silence that seemed to settle under his skin. No soft music playing from the living room, no faint sound of his wife's footsteps, no scent of the lavender candles she almost always lit at night. And just a quietness so sharp it felt like a warning. Broken, Jason placed his keys on the counter and tried to shake the feeling, telling himself she was running late from work, or stopped to see her sister, or maybe took a drive the way she sometimes did when she needed space. There was no reason to worry. Lauren was unpredictable like that, restless, emotional, always drifting from one mood to another like a leaf caught in the wind. He called her once, then twice, no answer. He made dinner for himself, something simple, something to distract the growing tightness in his chest. Time stretched thin, the night feeling longer than it should. The clock moved past, ba PM, then Jule, then by Trapper Separatution, then Sir E Ling PM. He was no longer pretending nothing was wrong. Lauren had never stayed out this late without telling him. She was many things, difficult, stubborn, impulsive, but she wasn't careless. She'd thought of Jason worrying about her sextray. She hated the thought of Jason worrying about her. She once told him she'd rather die in a ditch than make you lose sleep. He believed that once. He believed so many things. Yeah, but the truth was already drifting toward him like a shadow forming in the corner of a room. Lauren wasn't coming home. He paced the living room, checked the driveway again, walked down the street for signs of her car, her silhouette, anything that gave him something to hold on to. The quiet neighborhood glowed with warm porch lights, but everything felt foreign, as if he was walking through someone else's life. When he finally picked up his phone with the intention of calling the police, he told himself it was precaution, just precaution. But he didn't get the chance to dial, because before he could even press, Joe Fui, red and blue lights spilled across his driveway. Like 2 patrol cars pulled up without sirens, their engines rumbling low. Jason stood frozen at his door as 3 officers stepped out, their faces set, their flashlights bright in the dark. "Ket Mr. Keller?" the lead officer asked, but his tone wasn't one used for a missing person inquiry. It was the tone people used when they approached danger, quiet, measured, cautious. Jason nodded, his stomach sinking. "Ket, we need to speak with you," the officer said. "It's about your wife." The world didn't fall apart in explosions or screaming the way movies show loss. Sometimes it falls apart quietly, like glass cracking under pressure, inch by inch, line by line. Jason's heartbeat thundered as he stepped aside. "Is she okay?" he asked. His voice barely came out. "Ball. Did something happen?" The officers looked at each other. Not a good sign. "Cown." The lead officer spoke slowly, as if choosing each word carefully. "We received a call earlier tonight from someone claiming your wife might be in danger." Jason felt the air leave his lungs. "In danger? How?" "From who?" The officer didn't blink. "From you." The room seemed to tilt. Jason almost laughed then, not because it was funny, but because panic and disbelief collided inside him. "What?" That's insane," but the officers weren't reacting with confusion or sympathy. Their eyes held something else, something that made Jason's blood run cold. They believed it. Whoever called them sounded convincing enough that they came to him first. "What exactly was reported?" Jason managed to ask. One of the officers pulled out a small notepad. "She said she felt threatened, that she planned to leave the house tonight because she feared you would become violent if she told you." Jason stared at him as if words had become foreign. "My wife didn't call you," he whispered, "because there was no other explanation. She wouldn't say that. She would never," but he couldn't finish because something inside him twisted, an ugly suspicion he didn't want to face. Lakaya, Lauren had been distant lately, short-tempered, secretive, always leaving her phone face down, always locking the bathroom door, even when she was only brushing her hair. There were signs, tiny ones, but he ignored them. He trusted her more than he trusted his own instincts. "Did someone tell you she's missing?" Jason asked, though saying the words felt like swallowing sand. Another officer cleared his throat. "We found her car." His heart stopped. "Icanaft. It was abandoned on Route Serjolt near Miller's Bridge," the officer continued. Driver's door open. Her phone smashed a few feet away. The living room spun. Jason gripped the wall to steady himself, but the cold truth kept sliding closer, pressing against his ribs. Lauren wasn't missing. Someone wanted it to look like she had been taken, or hurt, or killed. And they wanted Jason to be the story's villain. The officers separated, walking through the house with gloved hands, searching rooms, opening drawers. Jason watched helplessly as they moved with deliberate caution, touching nothing they didn't want to be seen touching, glancing at him as if expecting him to snap. "Verpers apta prom salp demanded." "Why are you searching my home?" Jason demanded. "You don't even know what happened. We're following protocol," the lead officer replied. But Jason could feel it. Protocol was just the polite word. Suspicion was the truth. One of the officers returned from the hallway carrying something Jason didn't recognize. "Ken, sir," he said, "we found this in the bathroom." Jason's stomach dropped. It was a small towel, stained red. "It's makeup," Jason insisted. "It has to be my wife. She uses dark lipstick. But the officer shook his head. "We'll test it, but it appears to be blood." Jason felt a chill creep up his spine. Blood? In his bathroom, he hadn't used that towel. He hadn't even gone into that bathroom since morning, Mr. Keller, the lead officer said. "We need you to come to the station and answer some questions." The world moved fast, then too fast. Flashlights sweeping across the living room, whispers exchanged between officers, the kind that speak louder than words. To them, he wasn't a husband, he was a suspect. Lauren's face flashed in his mind, her smile, her laughter mocking in his mind. Her smile, her laughter, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Was she hurt? Was she scared? Or a darker thought stabbed through him, one he couldn't say out loud. And what if she wasn't hurt at all? What if she wasn't missing? What if she walked away on purpose? But why? Why would she destroy everything this way? The question lingered like a shadow that refused to move. He followed the officers outside, their flashlights bouncing against the dark. Neighbors peered through blinds, porch lights flicked on, whispers traveled through the night like smoke. In a matter of hours, the story had already begun taking shape in their eyes. Jason Keller, the husband whose wife felt unsafe, the man who couldn't keep his temper, the man who might have done something unforgivable. Rumors don't wait for answers, they grow in the dark. Jason sat in the back of the patrol car, staring at his reflection in the window, a reflection he barely recognized. The quiet man with the quiet life was gone. In his place was someone standing on the edge of a story he didn't write, nightmare he never saw coming. As the car pulled away, Jason's house shrank in the rearview mirror, swallowed by darkness. He didn't know it yet, but this wasn't the night his wife vanished. It was the night his old life did. And before he could uncover Lauren's truth, he would have to face a far harder one. Someone was orchestrating this, and they were very, very good at it. UK. He looked into the dark road ahead, heart pounding like a warning drum. This was only the first strike, the beginning of a betrayal so deep it would take him months to understand, and a year to avenge. The interrogation room was colder than Jason expected. Not the kind of cold that came from air conditioning, but the kind that seeped from concrete walls, sterile and judgmental. A single metal table separated him from two detectives who entered with stiff shoulders and narrowed eyes, as if they had already decided which role he was meant to play in the unfolding narrative. Jason didn't speak, not at first. He knew silence could be mistaken for guilt. But words spoken too fast could be mistaken for panic. And right now, panic was exactly what their eyes were searching for. Detective Hartman took the seat across from him, a man with lines around his eyes carved from years of squinting at criminals, or men he believed were criminals. Beside him sat Detective Laurel, younger, leaner, eyes too sharp for someone who should still have idealism left. Hartman clicked on a recorder. "Jason Keller," he said, in a tone meant to sound neutral but failing. "We need you to walk us through the last 24 hours, Jason told them what he could, what he knew, what he believed. But with every sentence he spoke, their faces hardened. Not with understanding, but with confirmation. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then Hartman laid the first piece of evidence on the metal table, a photograph, a shot taken inside Jason's home. A cracked picture frame lying on the bedroom floor, glass scattered as if thrown in anger. Except Jason had never seen it before. The frame was still intact on his dresser that morning. He frowned. That wasn't there when I left for work. Laura looked at him, unblinking. Your neighbors heard an argument last night. Jason nearly laughed at the absurdity. There was no argument. I wasn't even home until after 7. Hartman slid another photograph forward, a dent in the drywall behind the kitchen door, small round. Like something heavy had been slammed into it. He stared at it, trying to place when that damage happened. He couldn't because it didn't, mister. Keller, Laurel said, your wife's sister claims Lauren told her you've put holes in walls before during fights. The words hit him like a punch to the chest. Lauren's sister, Grace, had never liked him. A woman who collected drama the way others collected stamps. If she ever had the chance to paint Jason as unstable, she would gladly color in every inch. But this wasn't irritation or sibling rivalry. This was targeted, coordinated, planned. Jason's fingers curled into fists under the table. Grace is lying, he said quietly. She hates me. Always has. Laurel nodded, jotting something down. That's what abusive husbands say. Jason felt heat rise in his chest, a pressure crawling up his neck, not fear, not guilt, but something far darker, being trapped inside someone else's story. He leaned forward. I have never ever laid a hand on my wife. Not once. You can ask anyone who actually knows me. Laurel raised a brow. Oh, we did. Hartman reached into a folder and dropped 3 printed statements in front of him. His stomach twisted as he recognized the names: Lauren's friend from yoga, a coworker from her real estate office, and her manager. Each page repeated the same phrases. Lauren confided in me. She said Jason had a temper. She said she was scared of him. The words blurred for a moment, as if his brain refused to register them. She told them these things, Jason whispered. Hartman didn't answer. He didn't need to. Jason's breath grew shallow, his thoughts tightening like a rope around his chest. Lauren spoke about him to people he barely knew. She planted Pranir Saxener Faust and Herrer. Lauren spoke about him to people he barely knew. She planted stories, seeds of fear. And now those seeds were bearing fruit. Detective Laurel folded her hands. There's more. Kakat Sadanaikek. She pulled out a small leather-bound notebook. Lauren's journal. Jason stared at it. Confusion, fear, shock, all knotted together. This was found in your bedroom nightstand, Laurel said. We'd like you to listen to an excerpt. And Hartman opened it and began reading, his voice quiet, almost apologetic. Lobregas, I'm scared of the nights when Jason comes home angry. He hides it, but I can feel it under his skin. I wish he would get help. I wish he would stop watching me so closely. Another page flipped. Lex, if anything ever happens to me, I want people to know I tried to leave, I tried to get out. Sin you diat have a find and daki yun kumben cheke. Jason shook his head, slowly, deliberately. That's not Lauren's handwriting, he said, even though his voice trembled. She writes in cursive, that's print, and she doesn't keep a journal. She hates journaling. Laurel leaned back, crossing her arms. You're out of Jamaldimanin. You're saying the journal is fabricated. Yes. Jason met that eyes, Henter 210 Trapire Pertainture. Jason met her eyes, fire rising in him. Because it is. Eka Hartman set the journal aside and exchanged glances with Laurel. To them, his denial was predictable, expected, even rehearsed. Jason could feel it now. The slow tightening of invisible ropes pulling around his wrists, his ankles, his throat. He wasn't a suspect because of evidence. He was a suspect because the story was already written. Then Hartman tapped on the folder again, and there's this. He turned a laptop toward Jason. A paused video on the screen, grainy traffic camera footage. What is that? Jason asked. Laurel hit play. A highway. Dark. Drizzling rain, Lauren's car, her silver Honda, driving closely behind a black pickup truck. The timestamp showed Chi, Wusher R, P.M. Jason froze. He had been home by then. She should have been leaving work, not following anyone. The footage jumped forward. The pickup turned off onto an unlit service road. Lauren's car followed. Her taillights flickered. And then the camera cut out. Laurel clicked pause. That road leads to Miller's Bridge, she said. The same area where we found her car abandoned. Jason stared at the screen, the moving images burning into his mind. Who's the driver of the truck? He asked, voice thin. We're working on that. But Jason had seen enough. Lauren hadn't been taken. She followed that truck willingly, knowingly, secretly. Laurel, he whispered, she wasn't running from me. Hartman's silence was louder than any response. Jason's pulse hammered beneath his skin. Pieces began sliding into place. Pieces he didn't want to see. Lauren distancing herself. Lauren taking longer routes home. Lauren lying about working late. Lauren's sudden interest in privacy. Lauren's new perfume. Lauren leaving her ring on the counter more often. He had chalked it up to a phase stress. Marriage wasn't perfect, he knew that, but betrayal had never crossed his mind. Now, betrayal was the only explanation that made sense. Laurel spoke, her voice a shade softer. Mr. Keller, do you know anyone who might want to harm your wife? Jason almost laughed, a hollow, disbelieving exhale. No, he said, but she knows someone who might want to harm me. The detective stiffened slightly at that. You can, a shift, subtle but real. Hartman leaned forward. Explain. Jason hesitated because he didn't have proof. Not yet. Just instinct. And instinct is useless in an interrogation room. Still, he spoke because silence was no longer protecting him. I think she ran away with someone, he said quietly. Someone who helped her stage this. Laurel's eyes narrowed. That's a serious accusation. So is accusing me of attacking my wife, he snapped, his voice cracking, the dam inside him breaking. The room fell silent, tense, thick, suffocating. Hartman closed the laptop and folded his hands. We have no evidence supporting your theory, he said, but we will look into the truck. Jason blinked, surprised by the shift. Meanwhile, Laurel added, we'll need you to remain available. Do not leave town. Jason nodded slowly. He wasn't thinking of leaving. He was thinking of how someone, Lauren or someone she trusted, had turned his life into a crime scene. When he was released from the station, the early morning air hit him harder than the interrogation had. The sky was still dark, the streets were empty, the world felt wrong. He sat in his car for a long time before he could turn the key. His hands trembled against the steering wheel, not with fear anymore, but with something colder, realization. The lies weren't sloppy, they weren't impulsive, they weren't emotional outbursts, they were strategic, layered, planned. Lauren had staged a trail of breadcrumbs pointing directly toward him. She told her sister stories. She told her coworkers lies. She planted a fake journal. She created a narrative of fear. Then she vanished, leaving Jason to drown under the weight of her fiction. But the traffic footage changed everything. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't afraid. She was running toward someone, not away. Jason's breath shook as the first true wave of heartbreak hit him. Not the sharp kind, but the deep, slow collapse of a man realizing the woman he loved had weaponized his love against him. He leaned back in the seat, closing his eyes. Tears blurred his vision, but he didn't wipe them. The emotional crash that followed was violent, fear turning into betrayal, betrayal turning into disbelief, disbelief turning into rage turning into something far more dangerous, clarity. Something shifted inside him, a breaking, a rearranging. He had begged the detectives to believe him, begged himself to find a reason Lauren might be innocent, begged fate to give him answers, but now? Now he was done begging. He opened his eyes slowly, staring at the dark road ahead. The world had turned its back on him in a single night. His reputation, his marriage, his peace, all stolen. But this wasn't the end for him, it was the beginning. Jason wiped his face with the back of his hand. His breath steadied, his heartbeat slowed, and a new thought settled into him, cold and unshakable. If lies were going to bury him, he would dig back, not with rage, not with violence, but with observation. Someone had planned this. Someone had built a story around him, someone had played him for a fool. He intended to learn every detail, every lie, every betrayal, every person involved. By the time he put the car in drive and pulled away from the station, Jason Keller was no longer the frightened, desperate husband the police thought he was. He had become something else entirely, a man who finally saw the truth. And truth, once awakened, is the most dangerous weapon of all. The storm didn't pass. It simply changed direction. By the time the sun rose the next morning, Jason Keller was no longer the frantic husband searching for his missing wife. He had become something else entirely, a man stripped of identity, a man marked, a man people crossed the street to avoid. It started with a whisper, they always do. One neighbor saw the police at his house. Another noticed the officers removing evidence bags. Someone posted online that Lauren Keller had fled for her life. By noon, Jason's street, once quiet, once neighborly, had turned into a spinning whirlwind of rumors, judgment, and amateur detectives. He looked out the window that day and saw a reporter standing across the street, speaking into a camera. Behind her, his mailbox was overflowing with pamphlets about abuse hotlines. Nah, duh. Beside the curb sat a neighbor who once borrowed his ladder and returned it, with a smile now staring at him with a mixture of fear and disgust. Jason had done nothing, but in the court of public opinion, nothing was never enough. The first hit he took came from someone he trusted, his boss, Jason. Until the investigation clears, we have to let you go. No hearing, no explanation, just a clean cut. The company didn't want to be associated with controversy. A criminal accusation was bad for business, even if he wasn't charged with anything yet. The second blow came when his friends ghosted him. He sent messages, nobody replied, people didn't even read them. It was as though his number was suddenly radioactive. A colleague passed him in the grocery store and turned his cart around so fast it nearly toppled over. That man later left a comment under a news article calling Jason a ticking time bomb. His world was shrinking, piece by piece, but nothing crushed him like the moment he saw Derek Cole's face plastered across the screen. It was a live broadcast, another reporter standing in front of his house, sensationalizing the tragedy like it was entertainment. Derek stood beside her wearing a black jacket and a grief-stricken expression that looked too polished to be real. The reporter leaned in toward him. "Derek, you were the last person Lauren spoke to before she disappeared. Can you tell us what she said?" Derek lowered his head, shaking it slowly, carefully, dramatically. He played the part well. She told me she was scared," he murmured. "She said Jason had been watching her. She said she didn't feel safe. I begged her to leave. I begged her to come to me, but she just vanished before she could." Jason felt his stomach drop. "Tay," the man continued, eyes glistening with emotion that looked rehearsed. "I should have been able to protect her. She trusted me," the reporter nodded sympathetically, "and you too. We're close?" Derek hesitated, then lifted his head with a tortured expression. "We were. She deserved better." Jason's grip on the remote tightened until his knuckles turned white. This wasn't real, none of it was. Derek wasn't Lauren's confidant. He was the reason she disappeared. He was the ghost in the traffic footage. The man driving the truck she followed. It was all coming together, just not fast enough to save Jason's life from imploding. The third hit was the most brutal. The police investigation went public, and with it came a set of videos. The news stations got them first, clips of Lauren crying into her phone camera, whispering about fear. Snippets of texts where she wrote things like, "He's scaring me. I don't know what he'll do. I feel trapped." They were powerful, they were heartbreaking, they were lies. Jason recognized the timestamp on one of the videos. It was recorded on a night they had dinner at her favorite restaurant. She'd ordered dessert and laughed so hard she nearly choked. But apparently, later that same night, she had filmed herself claiming he had grabbed her arm and threatened to make her pay. She lied with ease, she lied beautifully, and Derek leaked those videos to the media, playing the grieving hero who tried to save a woman in danger. Jason stared at the screen as the world turned against him. Every comment, every headline, every opinion. Monster husband. She knew she needed to run. This man should be arrested immediately. He's guilty. You can see it in his eyes. He was being tried without trial, sentenced without evidence, destroyed without truth. His phone buzzed constantly, not with support, never support, but with angry messages and threats. "Now, you better pray they find her alive, you psycho. Come near our neighborhood again and see what happens. And we know what you did." The ugliness was suffocating. But the breaking point arrived 2 days later, when his own parents called him at dawn, voices trembling. "Jason, maybe you should leave town for a while." Even his family had begun to doubt him. The next week was a blur. Everywhere he went, eyes followed him. Every door he knocked on stayed shut. Every opportunity slipped through his fingers. Then came the night someone threw a brick through his front window, and the note tied to it read, "Justice for Lauren." Jason cleaned up the shattered glass with numb hands. He didn't call the police. They wouldn't help him now. They already believed he deserved it. By the time he finished cleaning, his home no longer felt like a place to live. It felt like a cage. A museum of accusations. That was the night he packed a single suitcase, a few clothes, important documents. The last photo he had with Lauren, he sat on the edge of the bed that once felt warm. He stared at the walls that once felt safe, and he realized something painful. He wasn't fleeing guilt. He was fleeing everyone else's version of him. He locked the door behind him and stepped out into the night. A man without a home. But as much as the world pushed him out, something began shifting in him, a seed of clarity, a quiet awakening. Because when a man is stripped of his job, his friends, his reputation, when a man loses everything he stands on, he begins to notice things he once missed, the cracks, the odd details, the inconsistencies. The truth didn't shout, it whispered, and Jason finally had the silence he needed to hear it. It began with a credit card alert. He was sitting in a motel room miles away from town, lights off, staring at the ceiling when his phone buzzed. A notification from his bank, a charge he didn't make, a large sum transferred from his joint account to a new one he didn't recognize, a new name, a new state, a new life, Lauren's life. She wasn't kidnapped, she wasn't missing, she wasn't hiding from danger. She was running toward Derek. Jason sat upright, his pulse steadying for the first time in weeks. Then came the second clue, a hotel receipt emailed to Lauren's shared inbox, a place they had never visited together. A reservation for two, checked in the day after she vanished. The next clue was even sloppier. A department store purchase in her name, a city far away, clothes, shoes, makeup, running away took preparation. Running away took money, and she had stolen his. Piece by piece, the story began to realign itself, not the story people told about him, the truth beneath the rubble. Lauren wasn't escaping abuse, she was escaping accountability. She wasn't a victim, she was the architect. Every tear in those videos, every whisper in those texts, every accusation she planted. All of it was ingredients in a recipe she'd been preparing for months. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of getting caught. Jason leaned back in the motel chair, staring at the dim light seeping under the door. His mind wasn't spinning anymore, it was sharpening. He realized something crucial, something that shifted the entire axis of his suffering. Lauren didn't plan for him to survive the fallout. She planned for him to disappear, not physically, socially, financially, emotionally. She wanted to erase him so she could start fresh with Derek, but she made one mistake. She underestimated what a man can do once he has nothing left to lose. Jason exhaled, slow and controlled. His heartbeat was steady, focused, not broken, reshaped. He knew what he had to do, so he vanished. Not with fear, not with shame, but with purpose. He quit the motel the next morning, leaving no record of where he was going. He disposed of his old phone and purchased a burner. He changed his appearance just enough to blend in, nothing dramatic, just forgettable, and he traveled, not toward home, toward the truth, toward the place where Lauren's credit trail led, toward the place where Derek thought he won. The world believed Jason Keller was falling apart. But what nobody realized, not the police, not the neighbors, not even Lauren, was that the collapse was only the beginning. Because sometimes a man must break first before he becomes unrecognizable. And Jason Keller was becoming something that terrified him, but would terrify them even more. A quiet, patient shadow, a man erased by lies, a man watching, the kind of man who doesn't strike quickly. The kind of man who waits. They thought they destroyed him, but they only removed the distractions. Now he could finally see, and what he saw was a truth, far darker than betrayal. They hadn't simply abandoned him, they had challenged him, and deep inside, behind the grief and hollowed-out pain, a new version of him was beginning to breathe. Not a monster, not a victim, something more dangerous. A man with nothing left to lose and a reason to disappear. When he stepped off the bus in a new city, carrying a single bag and a hollow past, Jason felt the cold air hit his face. But it wasn't the chill of fear anymore. It was the chill of awakening. He didn't come here to confront her, not yet. He came to understand the people who destroyed his life, and to study them, to track their patterns, to memorize their weaknesses. He came to build the foundation of something she would never see coming. Because revenge is never loud in the beginning. It's quiet, it's invisible, it's patient. And Jason Keller had just learned how to be all three. The bus pulled away behind him, its engine fading into the distance, leaving Jason standing alone on a quiet street in a city that didn't know his name. That anonymity felt strangely comforting. For the first time since the nightmare began, nobody stared at him with suspicion. Nobody whispered. Nobody cared who he was or what had happened to his wife. He was invisible, and invisibility was an advantage. Jason didn't check into a hotel under his real name. He didn't use cards, didn't call home, didn't reach out to anyone who once knew him. He found a small, bare-bones apartment rented in cash, an efficiency unit where the walls were yellowed by old sunlight and the floor creaked under every step. It wasn't home, but he no longer needed a home. He needed a base. He sat on the worn mattress that first night, the springs groaning beneath him, and spread out what little he still had, the burner phone, a notepad, a pen, and copies of the bank statements that exposed Lauren's first mistakes. Those numbers weren't just transactions, they were breadcrumbs, desk one. They were the trail out of the life she built with him and into the one she built with someone else. and Jason followed them carefully, methodically, the way a surgeon studies the anatomy of a wound before operating. Yeah, it didn't take long to find the shell company where she funneled money. It had Derek's fingerprints all over it, his address, his emergency contact, even a subscription he forgot to privatize. From there, Jason traced the couple to a small suburban town 3 states away, a town where they registered new names, a town where they rented a home with a white picket fence, a town where they opened a small business, a wellness clinic Derek claimed he always dreamed of owning, a town where they smiled for neighbors, told stories about escaping a dangerous past, and reinvented themselves as people they never were. Jason read the details in silence. His pulse didn't spike, his breathing didn't quicken. Rage didn't consume him, not anymore. Something colder had replaced it. Strategy. He spent the next month building a life nobody could trace. He bought secondhand clothes from thrift shops, altering his look just enough to blend into any crowd. He cut his hair slightly shorter, trimmed the beard he never used to have, and adopted a posture that made him look relaxed, harmless, forgettable. Forgettable was useful. He created 3 different identities, each crafted carefully with prepaid phones and backstories simple enough to keep consistent. Then he spent hours studying Lauren and Derek's new world from afar, their home, their clinic, their routines. Every detail mattered because every detail introduced a crack he could widen later. From the first day he watched them, he realized something important. Their new life was built on lies. But lies are fragile structures, and all they needed was a push. He watched Derek first. Derek Cole, once a mediocre EMT with a hero complex, walked around town with an air of importance. He dressed like a man who thought success made him better. He spoke loudly, laughed loudly, drank too much, and flirted with anything breathing. Jason watched him leave the clinic late at night and meet someone behind a bar, another woman, not Lauren. Their interactions were casual, but there was a familiarity to them, a physical closeness, a touch on the arm that lasted too long. Derek had a temper, too. Jason saw it the night a teenage boy accidentally bumped into the side of Derek's truck. Derek grabbed the kid by the shirt, shaking him hard enough to make passersby intervene. He calmed down quickly, smiling like nothing happened, but Jason saw the real him, volatile, insecure, territorial. Derek was predictable. Predictability was leverage. Then came Lauren. Jason watched her from a distance in the grocery store one morning. She wore oversized sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. She checked her reflection in the freezer doors as if searching for a crack in her disguise. She moved through the aisles with precise caution, avoiding long conversations with anyone. Her smile was brittle, her posture tense. She wasn't thriving, she was surviving, and survival fueled mistakes. Jason noticed she used the same credit card at the same times every week. Not careful, not hidden, a habit. A routine he could exploit. He noticed she avoided certain streets, certain people, certain conversations. She had always been clever, but cleverness born from fear is never stable. She lied to everyone in that town, and she lied even more to herself. He watched the way she clung to Derek's arm when they were in public, smiling too wide, laughing too brightly. But the moment he turned away, her face fell into an expression Jason knew well, an expression carved from anxiety. Lauren had her own weaknesses. Manipulation, when stretched too thin, collapses inward. Jason didn't rush. Revenge that comes too quickly is just retaliation. He wanted something purer. He wanted clarity, precision, and inevitability. And so he took his time. He started small, slipping into the edges of their world, the way fog slips under a door crack. Never noticed head-on, but always there in the background. The first identity he used was Ryan, an investor supposedly looking to support local businesses. He visited the clinic under the guise of evaluating potential funding opportunities. Derek met him with the enthusiasm of a man obsessed with being admired. He bragged about equipment he couldn't afford without stolen money. He introduced Jason to staff members with exaggerated humility. He spoke about Lauren as if she were his partner in both business and life, strong, resilient, loyal. Jason smiled politely and left Derek thinking he'd impressed a potential investor. Then Jason returned as someone else a week later. This time, he was Mark, a concerned customer curious about the clinic's reputation. He asked subtle questions around town. Questions about Derek's temper, questions about Lauren's past, questions that planted seeds of uncertainty. People didn't think much of it, but they remembered the questions. A good rumor doesn't need a storyteller. It only needs a spark. Jason made sure sparks fell everywhere. He returned again as Ethan, a passerby who struck up conversations with business owners near the clinic. He dropped hints about financial irregularities at the clinic. He asked if anyone else noticed how Lauren avoided eye contact. He wondered aloud why Derek seemed nervous around uniformed officers. Small comments, nothing accusatory. Just enough to let imaginations do the rest. The ripple effect was immediate. People talked, people speculated, people connected dots that didn't exist. Derek sensed the shift but didn't know why. He tightened his grip on the clinic. He became short-tempered with staff. He argued with Lauren in whispered tones behind locked doors. Lauren noticed things too. She sensed people watching her. She felt the subtle coldness in small interactions. She started checking over her shoulder more often. Jason sowed doubt like a farmer sowing seeds, and like any crop it grew. One evening, Jason watched them from across the street as they left the clinic together. Derek walked ahead, irritated, muttering under his breath. Lauren trailed behind, arms crossed, her eyes darting around nervously. Something had shifted between them, something small but important. A fracture. Jason decided it was time to press harder. He sent a letter, no name, no return address. Just a short message typed neatly on paper. Does he tell you everything? You left one liar for another. He watched from his car as Lauren found it in the mailbox. She froze, reading it twice, 3 times. Her eyes flickered toward Derek, who was inside the house, yelling at someone on the phone. She pocketed the letter and didn't tell him. Secrets are seeds too. Jason deepened the game. He sent another letter to Derek the following week. She ran from one man already. She'll run from you next. The timing was impeccable. Derek received that letter right after one of his late-night meetups with the woman from the bar. He crumpled the paper in his fist, looking around wildly, paranoid. He didn't tell Lauren either. Now there were secrets on both sides. Jason continued watching them unravel from a distance. Arguments increased. Derek drank more. Lauren slept less. Customers complained about tension at the clinic. Jason used each identity strategically, planting more whispers with precision. By the second month, a quiet tension had settled over Derek and Lauren's new life like a fog neither of them could escape. Then came the moment Jason had been waiting for, a crack wide enough to exploit. It happened on a Thursday evening. A storm rolled into town, heavy rain smothering the streets. Jason sat in his car across from their home, windshield wipers knocking rhythmically, watching as Derek stumbled drunkenly onto the porch. Lauren followed him out, her voice sharp, her movements frantic. Derek shoved her first. Not hard, but enough for her to grab the railing. She yelled. He yelled back. Yo cat, lightning flashed behind them like a strobe of truth. Jason didn't move. He didn't intervene. This moment wasn't his to stop, it was theirs to face. Derek stormed off the porch and into his truck, tires screeching through the rain. Lauren stood there, shaking, soaked, completely alone for the first time since she fled her old life. Jason watched her slump onto the steps, burying her face in her hands. And he realized something crucial. Their perfect escape was already decaying from the inside. He didn't have to destroy them, they were destroying each other. Ogata. All he had to do was guide the fall. Lauren lifted her head slowly, scanning the dark street. Her eyes were swollen, her hands trembled, her breathing was uneven. She didn't know Jason was near, watching the consequences of her lies tighten around her like a noose she'd woven with her own hands. She had stolen his life, now he was taking his time dismantling hers. Not loudly, not violently. Quietly, piece by piece, a silent war, every rumor, every letter, every identity. They were weapons, not to injure, to weaken. Because the most devastating revenge isn't the blow that ends a life, it's the pressure that makes someone destroy their own. Jason had become the pressure, and Lauren and Derek were buckling beneath it. As the storm deepened, he watched her rise unsteadily and go inside, shutting the door behind her. The lights in the house flickered, shadows shifted across the windows, voices rose again. Jason leaned back, calm, calculating, patient. Their world was starting to collapse, slowly, inevitably, and when it finally broke, he would be there. Not to hurt, not to confront, but to end what they started. The unraveling began quietly, so quietly that Derek and Lauren didn't even sense the shift at first. Storms rarely announce themselves with thunder. They begin with a single gust, a single tremor in the ground, something small enough to ignore. Jason knew this. He had studied storms, emotional ones most of all. He understood that true destruction doesn't rush, it creeps. It curls around a person's life like fog, invisible until they're stumbling blind. And so he started the collapse with something simple, a phone call Derek never expected. It reached the HR department of the ambulance company where Derek worked. An anonymous voice, steady, emotionless, reported concerns about an EMT with a history of temper problems and possible drug misuse. No names were given by the caller, but the report included enough details that Derek's supervisor pulled him aside the very next morning. Jason expected the seeds to take days to sprout. They bloomed instantly. Derek stormed out of the office with a face flushed red, hands shaking, muttering curses under his breath. His coworkers watched him with uncertainty, their trust already cracking. Someone filmed his outburst. Someone else whispered that maybe there had always been signs, maybe they just ignored them. By noon, the rumors rooted. By evening, they spread. By night, Derek felt the ground shift beneath him. Kakin, Jason observed all of it through a burner phone, scrolling through social media posts from locals who loved drama. Humans were predictable. They smelled blood faster than sharks, but the HR complaint was only the first pressure point. Next came Lauren's reputation. In it, she had coasted through her new life, pretending to be a polished, reformed woman, someone who had escaped a dangerous marriage and rebuilt herself. People admired her resilience, her grace. They called her strong, brave, inspirational. Jason made sure they learned the truth that she had buried under her carefully rehearsed stories. He didn't expose everything at once. That would have been mercy. Instead, he released information slowly, like a dropper feeding poison into a glass, one whisper at a time. A neighbor received an anonymous message. She has a history of cheating. Check your husband. Another neighbor was shown a screenshot of an old flirtatious message Lauren once sent a coworker. I can, just so you know who you're living next to. A third neighbor got a phone call regarding a woman who manipulates men for money. Within a week, Lauren found herself facing polite smiles that no longer reached eyes. Women exchanged glances behind her back. Men avoided conversation altogether. The isolation stung her worse than any accusation. Lauren wasn't built to live without attention. She fed off it like oxygen. Soon, the tension inside the house thickened. Derek felt the pressure of being doubted at work. Lauren felt the growing suspicion around her. Neither had the emotional stability to carry themselves, much less each other. Jason watched their relationship begin to buckle. But he didn't rush. He sharpened the blade even further. Their business would be next. Financial audits were easy to trigger. A few carefully placed emails to the local tax board. A few inconsistencies highlighted in their filings. Filings Lauren herself had messed up when she siphoned Jason's money months ago. The letter arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. Lauren opened it. Her scream tore through the neighborhood. Derek arrived home from a double shift to find her pacing across the kitchen, waving the paper like a death sentence. She accused him of forgetting paperwork. He accused her of using the wrong accounts. Their voices shot through the thin walls, loud enough for neighbors to record. Jason received those videos anonymously. People always loved sending scandal to strangers online. He smiled, not with joy, but with grim satisfaction. Justice wasn't loud or dramatic. It was precise, clinical. It was something you carved, not something you stumbled into, and the most important step had only just begun. Now came the psychological attack. Jason revealed a small slice of truth, just a sliver, enough to disrupt Derek's already fracturing stability. From a ghost email account, he sent Derek a screenshot of a message Lauren had exchanged with a man months ago. The message wasn't particularly explicit. It only read, wish things were different, wish we had more time together. Jason paired it with a single line. You trusted the wrong woman. It was enough. Derek stared at the message longer than he should have. His paranoia, already fermenting, boiled over. Every late grocery run Lauren made, every moment she stepped outside to take a call, every time she smiled at someone in public, all of it transformed into fuel for a fire he couldn't control. The irony amused Jason. Lauren once weaponized fear to ruin him. Now Derek drowned in it. But Jason didn't let Lauren remain steady either. She received her own messages. Pictures of Derek talking to a young female coworker, taken on Jason's discreet visits to Derek's workplace. A cropped screenshot of a woman's profile with the caption, he promised he'd leave her soon. Another message, are you sure he's loyal? He wasn't loyal with you. Lauren spiraled fast. She confronted Derek 3 times in a single day, her anxiety turning to nagging, then accusations, then tears. Derek shouted back, plates shattered, doors slammed hard enough to shake the frame. Their once romantic escape, the life they'd ruined Jason to build, now became a battleground of suspicion. Jason watched from a distance, invisible but ever present. On some nights, he sat inside his parked car across the street, hidden under darkness, observing the silhouettes of 2 people tearing themselves apart. They deserved every second. The collapse accelerated the following weekend. Derek, already on thin ice at work because of the investigation, snapped at a coworker during a call. The coworker reported it. HR placed Derek on mandatory leave pending evaluation. Kazadakata. He came home furious, ready to vent his frustration. But Lauren had found yet another anonymous message waiting for her, this one containing a picture of Derek sitting inside his ambulance, smiling at a female paramedic. A harmless, friendly smile, but Lauren had stopped interpreting anything as innocent. When Derek walked through the door, Lauren confronted him with the fury of someone betrayed twice in the same lifetime. She hurled the printed photo at his face. He shoved her hand away. She slapped him. He punched the wall. She screamed. He screamed louder. And eventually their voices broke, leaving behind an eerie silence that filled the entire house. The neighbors called the police. By the time officers arrived, the couple looked exhausted, drained, hollow. They blamed stress, finances, misunderstandings. No charges were filed, but the officers noted the tension carefully, as if expecting to be called back very soon. Jason watched it all unfold from down the block, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. It wasn't enough for them to suffer. He needed them to understand why, and so he sent Lauren one final message that night. In a grainy picture of their mailbox, a short caption, some lies collapse on their own, others need help. She went pale. She looked around the neighborhood, eyes wide, searching for the watcher who had just reminded her that their perfect new life was not as hidden as she believed. Meanwhile, Derek sat inside the bedroom staring at the message Jason sent him earlier, the one calling Lauren unfaithful, the one he kept checking every few minutes even though he pretended he didn't care. Both of them curled inward, wounded, suspicious, alert, both unaware that the real threat wasn't each other. It was the ghost they'd created, the man they had buried alive with false accusations. The man who now moved through the shadows more quietly than breath. And as the days passed, neither Derek nor Lauren realized that Jason was no longer simply watching them. He was closing in worse. He wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't alone anymore. Return of the monster. And the price of her own story, her finally broke, wasn't loud. It didn't arrive with screaming or violence or shattering plates. It came quietly, like exhaustion settling into bones, like a truth she had been outrunning finally catching her by the ankle. Derek had been spiraling for weeks now, suspended from work, paranoid, accusing, pacing the house like a trapped animal. He checked Lauren's phone when he thought she wasn't looking. He questioned her every outing, every message, every breath. The man who once promised her a new life now blamed her for destroying his old one. And Lauren. She was tired, not guilty, never guilty, not in her own mind, but tired. Tired of lying, tired of managing Derek's anger, tired of pretending they were still a team. Betrayal loses its flavor when the person you ran away with becomes the next danger you fear. That night, Derek hurled her phone across the room because she didn't answer it fast enough. The device shattered against the wall. Lauren didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply sat down and realized something that chilled her more than any threat Derek could make. Yike! She had chosen him over Jason, and now she couldn't remember why. And a bear betrayer nashikam spymans. The escape she once staged so dramatically, faking fear, staging injuries, leaving tearful messages, suddenly felt like a performance she had watched someone else do. A script she had memorized but no longer believed in. Derek stood in the hallway, chest rising and falling, waiting for her to react. She didn't. And in the stillness that followed, she felt something snap inside her, something small, something final. She packed a bag and walked out. Derek didn't try to stop her this time. He muttered, "You never changed," and not once, Blas. He only muttered, "You never changed," not once. Lauren closed the door behind her and whispered to no one, "Neither did you." She didn't know that someone watched her leave, someone who had been waiting for this exact moment, someone who had been waiting for her to fall apart. Jason watched from the alley across the street. He didn't feel triumph. Not yet. Not until the truth had weight. Not until justice had shape. But this, Lauren leaving, was the signal he had been waiting for. Now it was time. And his first move wasn't toward Lauren, it was toward the government. The file he sent to federal investigators was not rushed or messy. It was precise. A collection of bank transfers, forged signatures, stolen funds, and financial laundering tying both Lauren and Derek directly to money siphoned from Jason's accounts years before. He didn't include his name, he didn't need the credit, he simply sent the truth. And truth, once released, does not care who it destroys. Within hours, an investigation reopened. Federal agents began tracing the accounts. Derek's name appeared everywhere. Lauren's fingerprints decorated the digital trail like signatures on a confession. Derek received the first call from investigators the next morning. He exploded. He accused Lauren of setting him up. He accused her of planning to run again. He accused her of being exactly the kind of person Jason once claimed she was. Lauren, cornered by both the law and Derek's rage, tried to run again. But this time every road she chose led to a dead end. Her bank cards stopped working. Her car, quietly disabled days earlier, refused to start. Every friend she once manipulated refused to help her. Every neighbor refused to open the door. Every lie she used to weaponize now sounded hollow, even to her own ears. Her escape routes vanished. Not because Derek blocked them, because Jason had already mapped her world better than she ever had. And when she finally realized she had nowhere left to go, she found herself standing at the edge of town, suitcase in hand, trying to understand how everything she'd built had collapsed so fast. She didn't notice the man standing behind her at first. Not until he spoke. "It's strange," he said quietly, "seeing you run from a story you wrote." She froze, her voice vanished. Her suitcase dropped to the gravel. She turned slowly. Jason stood a few feet away, not angry, not wild, not violent, calm, too calm, the calm of a man who no longer carried weight on his shoulders. For a moment, Lauren didn't speak. Her lips trembled, not with guilt or fear of justice, but fear of the one thing she could never manipulate, a man she could no longer predict. "Yakin you," her voice cracked. "Now wing nallard. You shouldn't be here, but I am," Jason said. Lauren's eyes darted around the empty road, as if hoping someone, Anyon, might see them, but no one came. "Jason had chosen this place for a reason. I didn't hurt you," Lauren whispered, desperate. "I never touched you." "You know that. You did worse," Jason replied. "You took my life and gave it a story I didn't choose." Her knees shook. Before she could speak again, a truck engine roared in the distance. Derek's truck. He had followed her. He screeched to a stop beside them, jumped out, and pointed at Jason with shaking hands. You did this. You ruined us." Jason didn't look at him. "You ruined yourselves." Derek lunged, but it wasn't Jason he attacked. It was Lauren, she screamed as he grabbed her wrist. "Tell him it was you. Tell him you made me do it." And that's when Derek noticed Jason wasn't scared. He was waiting. A faint buzzing sound echoed through the air. A phone. Jason held it up, thumb pressing play. A recording filled the empty road. "We'll make it look like he snapped. He'll get arrested and we'll disappear. He'll be the monster. We'll be the victims." The voices were unmistakable. Lauren's and Derek's, their plan. Their lie, their entire escape, recorded clearly, undeniably. Derek's face drained of color. Lauren's entire body slumped. You recorded us?" Derek stuttered. Jason shook his head. "No, someone who thought they were helping you recorded it. I simply found it." The truth was simpler, darker, and far more satisfying. Jason had risked everything to get that recording, months of patient manipulation, careful infiltration, planting seeds to make one of Lauren's former friends confess without realizing they were confessing. He never needed to swing a fist. He only needed their truth. Lauren backed away, voice trembling. "Jason, please. Don't ruin us. You ruined yourselves," Jason repeated. Derek stepped forward, reaching for the recorder. Jason didn't stop him. He stepped aside, letting Derek see the headlights approaching down the road. "Federal agents. You Lauren Sepson Sambertre Chalker." Lauren looked at the lights, then at Jason. "You called them," she whispered. "No," Jason said. "You did, the moment you stole from me, and then the agents arrived. They arrested Derek first. Fraud, financial crimes, obstruction, false reports. He fought, cursed, pleaded, insisted it was Lauren, insisted she set him up, insisted he was innocent. No one believed him. Lauren was next. Crimes were longer, more deliberate, more poisonous." When the cuffs snapped around her wrists, she finally looked at Jason, not with hatred, not with remorse, but with the sickening realization that the story she wrote, the one where she was the victim, where Jason was the villain, had finally ended, and she was the one standing in the role of the monster. As she was driven away, screaming that she didn't deserve this, Jason didn't smile, he didn't celebrate, he simply breathed for the first time in years. When the last car disappeared down the road, he stood in the quiet darkness and let the weight fall off his shoulders. Not joy, not triumph, just release. He picked up Lauren's fallen suitcase, set it gently by the roadside, and whispered to the night, "I never wanted revenge. I just wanted the truth," but the world hadn't cared about truth, it cared about stories. And when a lie replaced his life, when a false narrative became his identity, when the people he trusted painted him as a monster, revenge became the only language they understood. Jason walked away, leaving the empty road behind him. No one followed. No one accused, no one whispered. For the first time in a long time, the world was quiet. And the monster they created, the man they tried to bury, was finally free. Worry.